The golden sands of Babylon stretched as far as the eye could see, shimmering under the relentless sun. In the distance, the towering walls of the great city loomed, a symbol of power and might. Yet, amidst this splendor, there was a group of young men, weary and burdened, their hearts heavy with the weight of loss and exile. These were no ordinary captives. They were the finest of Judah's youth, chosen for their wisdom, knowledge, and striking appearance. Among them was Daniel, a name that echoed with the strength of God's judgment, yet now found itself surrounded by the voices of a foreign land. What thoughts must have raced through Daniel's mind as he walked through the gates of Babylon? A city so vast, so different from the hills of Jerusalem. The smell of incense and spices filled the air, mixing with the sounds of 1,000 different languages. He and his friends, Ananias, Mishael, Azarias, were now prisoners of the mighty King Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler who had torn down their beloved city and brought them to this place. But why were they, of all people, spared from the sword? What purpose did God have for them here, in the very heart of paganism? As they were led through the bustling streets, they were not taken to dungeons or forced into labor. Instead, they were brought to the king's palace, a place of unimaginable luxury and grandeur. The king had plans for them, it seemed, plans that involved not just survival, but service. Yet, to serve in the palace of a pagan king meant more than just learning a new language or understanding foreign customs. It meant facing challenges that would test not only their minds but their very souls. Could they remain true to their God in such a place? Would they bend under the weight of the king's expectations, or would they stand firm even in the face of the unknown? These questions hovered over Daniel and his friends as they were stripped of their identities, their names replaced with ones that honored the gods of Babylon. Daniel became Belteshazzar, a name that spoke of Bel, the chief deity of the Babylonians. What did it mean for a man to carry the name of a god he did not believe in? What did it mean for a young man, barely on the cusp of adulthood, to be thrust into a world where his every action was watched, his every move scrutinized? As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Daniel and his friends found themselves at a crossroads. They were no longer just captives, they were being groomed for positions of power and influence. The king's food, the king's wine, all the luxuries of the palace were theirs for the taking. But at what cost? Would they accept the king's offer and risk defiling themselves? Or would they choose a path of resistance, one that could lead to their ruin or perhaps to something far greater? In the silence of the night, as the stars flickered above the vast city, Daniel pondered these questions. His heart burned with a desire to remain faithful, yet the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. How would he navigate this new world? What choices would define his future? And in the end, would he and his friends emerge from this trial stronger, or would they be broken by the pressures of a world that did not know their God? These are the questions that linger in the air, questions that would soon find their answers in the most unexpected of ways. But for now, the city of Babylon sleeps, unaware of the storm that is quietly brewing in the hearts of 4 young men who refuse to be shaped by the world around them. In the corridors of the palace, where the walls were adorned with intricate carvings and the air was thick with the scent of incense, a subtle yet profound transformation was taking place. The young men who had been brought from Judah, Daniel, Ananias, Mishael, and Azarias, stood before the court officials, their eyes filled with a mix of determination and uncertainty. They had already faced the trauma of exile, the shock of being uprooted from their homeland. But what awaited them now was something that cut even deeper, the stripping away of their very identities. What is a name, you might ask? A name is more than just a label, it carries the weight of heritage, faith, and purpose. Daniel, whose name means God is my judge, was a constant reminder of the God he served, a God who saw all, who judged righteously. Ananias meant God has been gracious, Mishael, who is what God is, and Azarias, the Lord has helped. These names were not just words, they were declarations of who they were and whom they belonged to. But Babylon had other plans. In a formal ceremony, as was the custom of the Babylonians, these names were taken from them. In their place, new names were given, names that spoke not of the God of Israel, but of the gods of Babylon. Daniel became Belteshazzar, a name that invoked Bel, the chief deity of Babylon. Ananias was renamed Shadrach, Mishael became Meshach, and Azarias was now known as Abednego, each name tying them to the pagan gods of their captors. What must it have felt like for these young men to hear their new names for the first time? Did their hearts sink, knowing that every time they were called, it would be a call to forget their past, their God? Or did they silently resolve that no matter what name they were given, nothing could change who they truly were? This was more than just a name change, it was an attempt to erase their identities, to reshape them into the image of Babylonian culture and religion. In the eyes of the Babylonians, these new names were meant to strip away the old, to redefine these young men as servants of the empire, loyal to its gods and customs. But in the hearts of Daniel, Ananias, Mishael, and Azarias, the true battle was just beginning. Could a name truly change a man? Would these new identities succeed in severing their connection to the God of Israel? Or would they resist, holding fast to the truth of who they were, even in a foreign land? As they walked through the palace halls, their new names echoed off the walls: Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Yet within them, their true names remained, like a hidden flame that refused to be extinguished. It was a test not just of identity, but of faith. A challenge to remain true to themselves in a world that sought to mold them into something else. And so, the question lingers, in the face of overwhelming pressure to conform, how do you hold on to who you truly are? How do you remain unshaken when the very world around you demands that you change? Daniel and his friends would soon face these questions head-on, and the choices they made would echo through the ages, reminding us all of the power of identity and the strength of unwavering faith. In the heart of Babylon, surrounded by opulence and the allure of a life they had never known, Daniel and his friends were faced with a choice that would define their very existence in this foreign land. They had been chosen to serve in the king's palace, a place where the finest foods and wines were laid before them daily, delicacies that symbolized the wealth and power of the empire. But beneath the surface of this abundance lay a challenge to their faith, one that could not be ignored. The food and wine offered to them were not just ordinary provisions, they were offerings to the gods of Babylon, steeped in rituals and practices that directly opposed everything Daniel, Ananias, Mishael, and Azarias believed in. To partake of these meals would be to accept the ways of Babylon, to honor the gods of a nation that did not know the God of Israel. It was a subtle yet powerful pressure to conform, to blend in, to abandon the distinctiveness that set them apart as followers of the one true God. Could they resist? Could they stand firm in their faith in a place where compromise seemed so easy, so inconsequential? The temptation was not just about food, it was about loyalty, about where their true allegiance lay. In the grand scheme of things, what harm could a meal do? Yet, Daniel and his friends knew that it was not just about the food, it was about their identity, their devotion to God, and their refusal to be assimilated into a culture that was not their own. So they made a bold decision, one that could have cost them their positions, or even their lives. They went to the chief official and requested a simple alternative: to be allowed to eat only vegetables and drink water, a diet that would keep them pure and untainted by the practices of Babylon. This request was not without risk. The official, fearing the wrath of the king if the young men appeared weaker or less healthy than the others, was hesitant. Yet, Daniel's confidence in God's provision and protection was unwavering. "Test us for 10 days, Daniel proposed. "Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see." 10 days. It was a short time, yet it felt like an eternity as the test unfolded. What if they grew weaker? What if they lost their favor in the eyes of the king? But Daniel and his friends knew that their strength did not come from the rich foods of Babylon, but from their faith in God, who had sustained them through so much already. When the 10 days were over, the results were undeniable. Daniel, Ananias, Mishael, and Azarias appeared healthier, stronger, and more vibrant than all the others who had indulged in the royal provisions. Their faith had been rewarded, their loyalty to God vindicated. In a place that sought to reshape them, they had not only remained true to their beliefs, but had also thrived, proving that faithfulness to God could indeed withstand the pressures of a world that did not understand it. This act of defiance was not just about food, it was a declaration of independence, a statement that even in a foreign land, under the rule of a pagan king, they would not abandon their God. It was a testament to their unwavering faith, a reminder that true strength comes not from the pleasures of this world, but from a deep and abiding trust in God's provision. And so, the question echoes: in a world that constantly pressures us to conform, to compromise, to blend in, how far are we willing to go to stay true to our beliefs? Are we, like Daniel and his friends, willing to stand firm even when the cost seems high? Their story reminds us that faithfulness to God, even in the smallest of things, can lead to a strength and courage that nothing in this world can shake. One night, the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, was troubled by a dream so vivid, so disturbing, that it jolted him awake in a cold sweat. The details of the dream slipped from his memory like sand through his fingers, but the fear it stirred remained, gnawing at him relentlessly. Determined to understand its meaning, he summoned all the wise men of Babylon, magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers, demanding that they not only interpret the dream but also recall it to him. But who could do such a thing? The wise men, trembling before the king, admitted their inability to perform such an impossible task. Angered and frustrated, Nebuchadnezzar ordered that all the wise men of Babylon be executed, a decree that would soon reach Daniel and his friends, who were counted among the wise men. When Daniel learned of the king's decree, he acted swiftly. He requested an audience with the king and, with a calmness born of deep faith, asked for time to interpret the dream. That night, Daniel and his friends prayed fervently to God, seeking mercy and revelation. And God answered. In a vision, the mystery of the king's dream was revealed to Daniel. The next morning, Daniel stood before Nebuchadnezzar, not with the arrogance of a man who had solved a riddle, but with the humility of one who knew the source of all wisdom. No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about, Daniel began, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Daniel then recounted the dream in stunning detail. The king had seen a colossal statue, dazzling and terrifying. Its head was of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. As the king gazed at the statue, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet, shattering them, and the whole statue was broken into pieces, becoming like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. As Nebuchadnezzar listened, the fragments of his dream reassembled in his mind. This was it. This was the dream that had haunted him. But what did it mean? Daniel explained, the statue represented a succession of kingdoms. The head of gold was Nebuchadnezzar himself, the greatest of all kings. After him, another kingdom, inferior to his, would rise, represented by the silver. Then would come a third kingdom of bronze, and finally, a fourth, strong as iron, yet divided like the feet of iron and clay. But in the days of those kings, the God of heaven would set up a kingdom that would never be destroyed, a kingdom that would crush all the other kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it would endure forever. As Daniel spoke, Nebuchadnezzar's fear turned to awe. Here, before him, was the truth of his dream, a revelation not only of his own place in history but of the rise and fall of empires, and of a kingdom unlike any other, a kingdom established by the hand of God himself. The king, overwhelmed by the revelation, fell prostrate before Daniel and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, Nebuchadnezzar declared, for you were able to reveal this mystery. In that moment, the most powerful man in the world acknowledged the sovereignty of the God of Daniel. The dream, which had begun as a source of dread, ended as a declaration of God's ultimate authority over the kingdoms of men. But this raises questions that linger long after the dream's interpretation. What empires are we building in our own lives? What kingdoms do we seek to establish, and where do we place our trust? Daniel's story reminds us that all human power, no matter how dazzling or strong, is temporary. But there is a kingdom, not of this world, that will endure forever. Are we preparing for it? Are we ready to receive the rock that will shatter all earthly power and fill the earth with the glory of God? Imagine yourself in an ancient kingdom, where a mighty king, Nebuchadnezzar, commands that everyone, without exception, bow before a colossal golden statue. The decree is clear, all must worship this imposing figure, a symbol of the king's authority and dominion. Now, picture the scene. A vast crowd kneels, the sound of trumpets echoing through the valleys, and the silence of submission fills the air, or does it? Amidst this sea of people, three figures stand tall, unyielding. Can you see them? They are not swayed by the pressure of the crowd or the threat of punishment. But why? What could possibly compel them to defy the most powerful man in the land? These three, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to bow. They refused to let fear dictate their actions. But what happens next? How does the king respond to this act of defiance? And more importantly, what will become of these brave souls who dare to stand against the tide? As the king's anger burns hotter than the fiery furnace he threatens them with, the tension builds. You can almost feel the heat, can't you? But here's the question, in a world where the odds seem insurmountable, where does true power lie? Is it in the hands of a king who commands worship, or in the hearts of those who stand firm in their faith? The answers to these questions will keep you on the edge of your seat, as the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego unfolds in ways you could never predict. Praise to the God of Daniel. After Daniel revealed the meaning of the king's mysterious dream, Nebuchadnezzar was struck by the power of Daniel's God. For a moment, the mighty king acknowledged that there was a force greater than himself, a divine power that could unveil the secrets of the future. But can a king who holds the world in his hands truly humble himself? Nebuchadnezzar's recognition of God was fleeting, and despite witnessing the power of the divine, he continued to challenge and defy the Almighty. This defiance would not go unanswered, and it eventually led to his downfall. But what does it take for a man who believes he is invincible to learn true humility? What happens when a king's pride becomes his greatest enemy? The story of Nebuchadnezzar is a powerful reminder that no earthly power can stand against the will of God. As we delve into this tale, we must ask ourselves, how often do we, too, ignore the signs that are right in front of us? How far will pride take us before we recognize the true source of power? Belshazzar's feast. Belshazzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, hosted a grand banquet, filled with revelry and excess. But this was no ordinary feast. In a brazen act of defiance, Belshazzar took the sacred vessels from the temple of God, vessels meant for worship and holiness, and used them to indulge his guests. The air was thick with arrogance, as if nothing could interrupt the king's indulgence. But then, something extraordinary happened. In the midst of the feast, a mysterious hand appeared, writing a cryptic message on the wall. The room fell silent, fear gripping the hearts of all who witnessed the event. What could this message mean? The king, desperate for answers, called upon Daniel, known for his wisdom and connection to the divine. As Daniel interpreted the writing, the chilling truth was revealed: the days of Belshazzar's reign were numbered. The very night of his greatest pride would also be his downfall. But what was it that sealed his fate? How could a king who had everything lose it all in a single moment? This story serves as a powerful reminder that no one, not even a king, can mock the sacred without consequence. But more than that, it forces us to confront our own choices. When we hold something sacred, do we treat it with the reverence it deserves, or do we, like Belshazzar, take it for granted until it's too late? The lion's den. Daniel, a man of unwavering faith, found himself facing an impossible choice. A royal decree had been issued, forbidding prayer to anyone except the king. Yet, Daniel's devotion to God was unshakable. He continued to pray, openly and without fear, even as the threat of death loomed over him. His refusal to bow to the king's edict led to a dire punishment. Daniel was thrown into a den of lions, a fate that no one could survive. Or so it seemed. As he was lowered into the pit, the darkness closed in, and the growls of the lions echoed around him. But here's the question: what happens when faith meets the impossible? As the night wore on, something miraculous occurred. The lions, who should have devoured Daniel, instead remained calm, their ferocity subdued. Daniel emerged from the den unharmed, a living testament to the power of his God. When King Darius saw what had happened, he was overwhelmed. The king recognized that no earthly power could have saved Daniel from the lions. Only the true God could perform such a miracle. This event not only saved Daniel's life but also led to a profound change in the heart of the king. But what does this story teach us about the power of faith? In a world filled with challenges and decrees that test our beliefs, do we have the courage to stand firm like Daniel? And when we face our own lions, will we trust in the divine protection that goes beyond human understanding? Prophetic visions. Daniel, known for his wisdom and deep connection to the divine, was granted extraordinary visions that revealed the course of history long before it unfolded. These visions were not just ordinary dreams, They were windows into the future, filled with powerful symbols and profound mysteries. In these revelations, Daniel saw the rise and fall of mighty empires, depicted as fierce animals, each one representing a kingdom that would dominate the world for a time, only to be brought low. Among these visions was a chilling prophecy about a ruler, symbolized by the figure of Antiochus Epiphanes, who would embody the very essence of evil, a precursor to the ultimate Antichrist. But these visions were not just about earthly power and its eventual downfall. They pointed to something far greater, the coming of God's kingdom, a realm that would endure forever, surpassing all human authority. Daniel's visions offered hope and a reminder that no matter how powerful the forces of darkness may seem, they are destined to be defeated. As we explore these prophetic visions, we are compelled to ask, how do we interpret the signs of our own times? Are we prepared for the unfolding of events that these ancient prophecies foretell? And in the face of looming challenges, where do we place our trust, in the transient powers of the world, or in the eternal kingdom that Daniel foresaw? Reward for faithfulness. The story of Daniel is a powerful testament to the importance of unwavering faith in the face of overwhelming odds. Throughout his life, Daniel remained steadfast in his devotion to God, even when it seemed impossible. Whether confronting the fiery furnace, the lion's den, or the challenges of interpreting prophetic dreams, Daniel's faith never wavered. But what does it mean to be truly faithful? Daniel's life shows us that faith is not just about believing in times of comfort, it's about standing firm when everything around you crumbles. It's about trusting in a higher power, even when the world tells you to give up. And what happens to those who remain faithful? Daniel's story answers this with a resounding truth: God protects and rewards those who hold fast to their faith. Daniel was not only spared from death on multiple occasions, but he was also elevated to positions of honor and influence, all because of his unshakable trust in God. This leads us to reflect, in our own lives, when faced with trials and tribulations, will we have the courage to stand firm in our beliefs? Will we trust that, like Daniel, our faith will be rewarded? And perhaps most importantly, do we believe that, no matter the adversity, God is always with us, guiding and protecting us as we remain true to Him? As we draw this journey through the life of Daniel to a close, we are left with a story that transcends time, a story of courage, faith, and the power of the divine. Daniel's life is a vivid reminder that true strength does not come from worldly power or wealth, but from unwavering faith in something greater. From the fiery furnace to the lion's den, from prophetic visions to the rise and fall of empires, Daniel's story is a testament to the enduring power of faith. In a world where kingdoms crumble and kings fall, it is the steadfast heart that prevails. Daniel's life challenges us to ask, where do we place our trust? Do we bow to the pressures of the world, or do we stand firm in our faith, even when faced with the fiercest of trials? But perhaps the most profound lesson of Daniel's story is this: God is ever present, even in the darkest moments. His protection